And to find out what's happening in the Mid-Atlantic state of Delaware, we're live now to our U.S. correspondent Nick Harper. Nick, a very good morning to you, but evening our time. So you've been following the Biden campaign. Tell us a little bit more about what the activity has been. I see they seem very confident about his chances of winning.
Well, Joe Biden is using every single final minute of election day to try and get out the vote. He's campaigning in the neighboring state of Pennsylvania. He really sees that as the key state that he needs to win if he's going to win the White House. He's visited two locations in the state of Pennsylvania. Firstly, he went to Scranton, the place where he was born and spent the first 7 or 8 years of his life. He even visited his house that he grew up in. And now he's in Philadelphia, and he's been speaking to people there, telling them that Philadelphia is the key to this election. He feels very strongly that he has to win that state. It's part of the former traditional blue wall. A number of states, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin and Michigan, that Donald Trump flipped 4 years ago, winning them off the Democrat. The states that the Democrats used to enjoy winning time and time again. Donald Trump winning those states and becoming the first Republican president in some of them for 30 years to be chosen by those states. So it is therefore the reason why Joe Biden is spending so much time there. He's coming to Wilmington, where I am now, in a couple of hours' time. It's where he'll be spending this evening. It's the place that he's lived for almost 70 years, and he's hoping to spend the evening watching the votes come in with supporters and voters here in the city.
Nick, very interesting to hear his campaign manager talk about those swing states, saying that she believes that Biden can still win those 270 electoral votes even without those swing states. So how do they gather that? As you said, those are some of the states that flipped it for Donald Trump. He didn't have the majority of the votes nationally, but he managed to win these all-important states. So how does Biden believe that he'll be able to clinch the 46th spot as president?
Well, that's right. There were 6 states that Donald Trump flipped in 2016 that had been Democratic states before that. The campaign for Joe Biden has been looking to expand the map. So not just targeting those states they can win, they feel they can win back off the Republicans, but also looking at other states that sometimes for several decades have voted Republican, but which Joe Biden feels he may be able to flip this time around. For example, the state of Georgia, that hasn't voted for a Democrat in 28 years, but they've put a lot of effort into campaigning in that state. Joe Biden even sent his former boss, Barack Obama, to that state yesterday to campaign on his behalf. They're also looking at other states, Texas, Arizona, even North Carolina, states that they feel they may have an opportunity to try and flip from the president. It is that idea of expanding the map. So there is, I guess, a certain amount of confidence going into this election day from the Biden campaign. The opinion polls show them up nationally by about 7 to 9 percentage points. There is a narrow margin in many of the swing states, but the majority of them, Joe Biden is up, even in Pennsylvania, by a couple of percent. So there is, I guess, that confidence, but also a little bit of wariness, because, of course, the polls in 2016 were wrong. They suggested Hillary Clinton was going to win and win big, but she didn't. Donald Trump winning instead.
Right, so let's look at the Midwestern states. So I believe Joe Biden is about 10 points ahead in those. And let's look about what's important about this 10-point lead.
Well, those Midwest states, for example, Michigan and Wisconsin, those are the type of states that Democrats have enjoyed a lot of support in the past. Joe Biden is up, or at least going into Election Day, the opinion polls suggesting that he was up somewhere in the region of 5 to 6 percentage points up. They are important states. They're the traditional blue wall, the working class states that the Democrats really used to rely on to counter the southern states that had so much Republican support over the past few decades. Those were the states that the Democrats targeted on, that they relied on winning. Hillary Clinton felt that she was going to win them 4 years ago. Opinion polls suggested that she would be winning and winning handsomely in those states. Of course, that wasn't the case. So I guess even with these opinion polls showing that Joe Biden goes into this election day, so far ahead of President Trump, there is a slight amount of nervousness amongst the Democrats, amongst their supporters, amongst Democrat voters, and that's why Joe Biden, his campaign, is really campaigning hard right up until the last minute to make sure that their supporters go out to the polls and cast their ballots if they haven't already done so.
So, Nick, let's look at the point up until the last vote is cast, when that will be, and what the process will then be.
Well, it'll vary from state to state. Different states, they each get the opportunity to set their own polling times, at what time they shut. And of course, with the United States having 3 different time zones from the East Coast through to the West Coast, it continues through the evening until here on the East Coast at 11 p.m. Our time, the polls in California are closing. But then, of course, comes the vote counting, and different states have got different rules. So, for example, in Pennsylvania, where the thinking is that things will very much come down in this election, they will be counting the in-person votes first before they start counting the mail-in ballots. Now, that's the opposite in some other states. There are, of course, some states which will show very heavily Democratic or Republican support, and it'll be very easy to project which candidate has won in those states. But in the important swing states, those are the places where the vote counting could take many hours, potentially several days. The Democrats are already warning that this may not just be election day, it may be election week. And in the past, where we often get a result, we know who has won the overall vote by about 11 p.m. or midnight, we may not see that this evening, and we may not know for several days exactly who has won. If it's a landslide, of course, it'll be a different story. But if it comes down to every single vote, and bear in mind that those 3 Midwestern states, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan, when you add together the votes that Donald Trump won it by in each of those states last time round, it was only 69,000 votes in it across those 3 states. So it is likely that every single vote will count, and that is why it could take several days for all of this to be tallied up.
And early votes for Florida should be tallied rather quickly. We understand this is said to be the quickest and cleanest path to victory for Joe Biden. How much attention is on that state?
Absolutely. I mean, it is a crucial swing state. It is one of the ones that Donald Trump flipped 4 years ago. It is the one that both men would like to win. It has 29 electoral college votes, which is a very large number for a state. The thinking is that if Joe Biden wins that, he should win the White House. But of course, if Donald Trump wins it, it makes it a little bit harder for Joe Biden. He'll need to gather up other swing states to be able to get to that all-important number of 270 electoral college votes.
All right, so let's talk about the warnings that were issued before, that there may possibly be violence. Has there been any hint of that? Is there increased security out there at the polling stations?
Well, certainly increased security. Here we are just a few hundred meters away from where Joe Biden will be speaking tonight. They have put up a very high security fence around the venue to keep people out. But it's really in the big cities where there is concern. In nearby Philadelphia, just 30 minutes away, in Washington, D.C., a couple of hours away, in New York, in L.A. Those are the type of places where we're seeing shops and businesses being boarded up. The National Guard is already out on the streets of Philadelphia. There is certainly concern that we may see some sort of trouble, at least rallies and protests, while all of these votes are being counted. And the real worry is that the longer that counting takes, the more possibility there is for protests that could potentially turn violent. No suggestion of that at this stage, but it is something that is on the mind of Joe Biden and his campaign.
All right, thanks a lot, Nick. Nick Harper, SABC correspondent who's out there in Delaware. He is following the Biden campaign.